Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, and in this video I'm going to be looking at an issue which causes problems for photographers an awful lot of the time, even if they don't realise it. It's caused problems myself, and I'm going to talk about some ways I've got round it and approaches myself to these things. And it is a question of your photos. Good enough or perfect? Well, I've been involved in previous careers in engineering and the likes, and I've always believed that perfection is the enemy of the excellent. Striving for perfection is a futile effort. Now, I know a lot of people have this attitude towards getting something right and they call it perfection. To me, perfection is something you can never achieve, so why bother if you can never achieve it? I've always taken the approach, set very high standards, reach them, surpass them even on occasions, but know what you want to achieve. And it's key in any artistic endeavour, I think. It is knowing when to stop. How much editing of an image is enough? How much is over-processing an image? How much is just doing too much? Now, I'm a great believer in, if I'm not happy with an image, leaving it overnight, coming back, having a look, and perhaps having another go at editing something. But that's assuming that I'm just got an image that I need to get to a certain point. What about if it's an image that I'm not entirely certain about? Well, once again, leaving things can be a good idea. Setting yourself unreachable standards can put pressure on you, can make you think, well, it's not quite good enough. I could do better. When quite often you can't, you'll only mess things up further. Now, years ago, I used to do oil painting, mostly landscapes, and the hardest bit I ever found with any painting, whether it was done outdoors or touching it back up when I got home, just some finishing touches, was when to stop. And I can think of examples where I carried on too long. I carried on trying to refine and correct something, and I perhaps should have stopped at a certain point. Now, with image editing, you can keep a trail of your history. I don't use a non-destructive edit process. I keep instances of edits along the process, taking an image when I'm going towards a print, so I'll have snapshots along the way. I'm not worried about file storage. I'm not doing this for large numbers of pictures, so it doesn't matter too much. And I always get rid of some of the intermediaries once I've finished, if I think I'm not going to go back to them. Always keep the original files, so I can always go right back to the start if need be. And sometimes going right back to the start really does help. But in many ways, when I'm editing a file, I'm going through a series of stages, knowing where I want to get to. The worst thing in a way is having an image that you think, well, this is good, but I'm not quite sure it's right. And you start exploring things. Now, that's fine. I quite often have several routes where I look at a picture. I've had pictures where I've genuinely been unable to decide whether I want to do it as a black and white, a particular workflow, or a colour with a different workflow. The results are different. It depends what I'm going to use the picture for as well. Now, pictures like these are ones that I've just taken for my own benefit. I can spend as much, as little time on them as I want. What has been really useful for me is that I'm a commercial photographer. That means I get paid for photography. That means I get paid for producing images. I don't get paid for extraneous editing work that wasn't asked for. So in a way, the commercial pressures have made it much easier for me to rein in some of my I'm not quite happy with this feelings. Perhaps if I adjusted a little bit more. That's a way that works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. It's because I'm a commercial photographer. But I'm going to say that the right photos, when you do them, you just know they're going to make good photos. Now, I've looked at lots of my archive, and if you've not spent time looking up through your photography archive, go back, have a look at the archive. Work out why you took pictures, what you were hoping for from them. If you've got a whole series of pictures that just don't work, well, actually that's as beneficial in many ways for finding out why did you take, what were you looking for? Did you have a clear idea of what you're looking for? Now, I'll admit I quite often don't have a specific idea of an image when I go out and take ones. So a picture like this was, that's a holiday snap. Now, I took 3 or 4 versions of that. This one is the first one. And this is something I've noticed in looking at collections of pictures, that the picture that works is either the very first one of a series. So I've seen a picture, taken it, then I thought, well, maybe a few variations, and I've gone through a few variations and then I've moved on. The great pictures I've got are quite often the very first picture. The other bit is sometimes the great pictures are the end of the sequence, and I've got several black and white ones where I've got sequences of photos and it's the final image that got. Now, that's not because I just happened to take a sequence of pictures and the one that worked is the last one. It's because there was a sense of satisfaction of, yeah, I think I've got it with this last image. So it's quite interesting to see. It is very rare that I've taken a sequence of pictures where the best picture in the sequence is not the first or the last of the sequence. It shows the approach I'm taking, and it shows that I'm not quite happy. I'm looking for a particular type of image. I'm looking for something. I don't make notes on photographs when I'm taking or when I'm out and about taking photos. I do sometimes on commercial jobs, but that's a different matter altogether. No, it's very much about feel, what works. And it's about, for pictures such as this one here, taken of unloading a trawler at the harbour at Amble, it was just about the moment. Now, there's all kinds of stuff. You may well have heard of the decisive moment. I don't go with all the philosophy of photography and stuff. Never been particularly interested in it. That's the sort of stuff you write essays on when you're doing photography, getting photography qualifications. It's not the sort of stuff that most real photographers ever think about. But there is an element about it. In many pictures, it is about the moment. In this one, it's the people standing around the trawler. Some of them, no doubt, come to directly buy fish from here, but most of it's being unloaded, will be sold relatively locally. Some of it may even go to markets. I don't know what the process here is at this particular one. Other pictures I've taken a bit longer over. This one was just out for a walk. This was just on the beach at Beer on the south coast. A picture here of this one is at Pinmill on the Suffolk coast. I know that I took quite a few photos here. The very strong composition lines of the vertical poles, which are where boats are moored to, because the tide comes in quite a bit here. This is at low tide. There are quite a few images I looked for, finding something. Was I happy with it? Now, that's one that I like, but that has a personal recollection to me. It's not necessarily one that somebody else would like. And that's an important thing. Always ask other people if you're unsure. It's nothing better than spending ages obsessing over detail in a picture. This particular one here, this is in Mesa Verde in Colorado on a snowy day. It's quite high up. I spent quite a while on this one wondering about how to implement the tree, what sort of editing, how I was going to make the tree look. Everybody who's looked at it has just gone, oh, I really like the cloud, or oh, there's some other aspect of it. Remember that you as a photographer are a very bad curator of your work. And that so-called perfection that you think you're striving for may be utterly invisible to everyone else. Now, some people will say, yeah, but it's important that I can see that. I can see the problem in it. Well, I don't care if you can see the image, and perhaps sometimes you shouldn't either. I've commercially produced images which the clients absolutely loved, but I could see things that I think I could have done better in. Now, that will drive me next time I take some photos, will influence me. It's learning. I'm perfecting my skill. Every photographer is always perfecting their skills. That's how it works. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yeah, the client hasn't even seen the problems in this. The client is absolutely happy with it. The client is paying us, and the client is going to pay us to do more work. Something I should definitely think about, but worry about? I think not. This same approach goes to cameras and lenses as well. I've got some great photos taken with less than stellar lenses, and that's because they're great photos. Worrying too much about detail can be counterproductive. Now, I've got kit like this I use for my architectural photography. It's expensive kit, it's good kit. I can see the difference there. Does it make a difference for some of my other images? No, not so much. I use it because I'm familiar with it, I'm happy with it, and that's what works. It's always worth remembering when you worry about aberrations and problems with lenses that almost no one else is going to see those problems, particularly if you're zooming in too far on the screen looking for such things. Now, I do tests of lenses and things, so I'm actually used to looking for aberrations in lenses, but I know that when it comes even to large prints, those problems are not that serious really, and it depends once again what you're doing the print for. Now, all of these big prints I've got here, they've had quite a bit of work goes into them, but they're images that worked pretty much from the get-go, that needed a bit of cleaning up, needing a bit of adjustment of levels, shadows, colour, depth maybe, black and white in this case here, but they're all ones that they worked pretty much out of the camera. They would need tidying up, but they always worked out of the camera. Now, one other aspect on this one, colour management. I get asked a lot about colour management. I've done lots of testing of colour management kit over the years. And one of the things, and this I'm going to take issue with X-Rite. I've worked with them for years and I've said this to the face. X-Rite use the concept of perfection in their advertising. They asked me if they could use some of my pictures a while ago because I'd done some testing with their stuff, and I said yes. And I said, one proviso for that, don't you ever dare call me a perfectionist. Colour management to me is about getting things right first time more often. It is not about some spurious notion of perfection. Always remember too that colour management is there to do a job. Now, if you're doing scientific work and you need specific colour accuracy, if you're doing stuff for commercial print, then things are a bit different. But I'm talking about ordinary photographers taking pictures, wanting to make great prints. Remember, there is pleasing colour and there is accurate colour. Pleasing colour in a print on a screen is not necessarily the same as accurate colour. The camera makers go to considerable lengths in the way the data is processed from the sensor to produce pictures that people are going to like. It's why sometimes that one of the reasons why I record JPEG and RAW in cameras is I often look at the JPEG files just to see what the camera version of the picture is, as opposed to the RAW file, which I can then go away and process and do all kinds of stuff on. So I'm always very wary of the fact that I'm seeing something that's already gone through people's decision process, the camera makers, the video here, the colour reproduction. It's a combination of here, how I've set this monitor, my lighting, all kinds of things. I've set it up to try and make it so it looks reasonable. I don't profess to be a professional video maker. No desire to become one. That's why you don't get music or sweeping background shots or anything like that on my videos. I would be worried if I started wanting to include stuff like that. Just not what I'm about. Colour management, remember, it's there to produce great looking pictures. If you want to do numerical analysis of colour and stuff like that, there's lots of stuff you can do on that. But colour management for most photographers is about getting great looking pictures, and that's why I say it's about getting good looking pictures right first time more often. Not every time, because that ain't going to happen, but more often. So there you go. There's a few bits and pieces about how I rail against the notion of perfection. As I said, do ask other people. Just because you see something as a problem doesn't necessarily mean some other people do. And if they don't see it and you do, be prepared to accept that whilst you may think you're right, you may not be. Now, I'll round up with just a quick coverage of some things I've got coming up in December that some people may be interested in. I've got the Fuji GFX 100 coming back for quite a while to do some testing. I've got the, hopefully with it, the new 2035 zoom lens, which is supposed to be very good. I think, I can't remember what I got another lens as well. I forget which that one is. Probably the macro lens, the longer macro lens. I've also got a shift lens to test with it, not a Fuji one, and I have another wide angle prime to test with it. Now that one I genuinely can't say what it is, but come back in a few weeks and I'll have some information on it. So please do ask questions. If you've got any sort of questions about this video or others, please subscribe to the channel. It really is appreciated. And I hope me going on about perfection hasn't been too bad. Thanks.